Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right.
Amanda.
Sir?
Your network is looking. Is your network strong?
Yes, it is. I can hear you well.
Okay, you meet. Okay. All right.
So there are only three. We're only three here right now. When do you intend to start?
At exactly 12.
When is the PO speaking?
Yes, the POO is the first to speak, but do like a formal introduction of why we are here and just read through his profile bio before he begins.
Okay. So I'm going to go off camera right now. At exactly 12, the PO will be there. So I hope we'll start then.
Will he be coming anytime soon?
He's already around. At exactly 12, he will be seated. Once the camera comes up again, the PO will be the person you will see on the screen. And I just want to make sure you have everybody ready there and you're ready to roll.
Okay, yeah. So we are live now.
Or you want him to come on at 12:05 or like 12:10?
12:05.
Right, now that's better. So we're on the same page. 12:05, camera will come on and the PO will be seated. Agreed?
Okay. Yes.
All right. Thank you. I'll see you at 12:05.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so hi Colisa. Can you hear me? Hi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Pleasure to meet you. And good afternoon. So we will begin at exactly 12 noon here. And the public affairs officer will be joining us in 5 minutes time. And we are already streaming live on YouTube.
Yes,
and
we are.
we're looking forward to a wonderful session with you and Dr. Emilade and Russell Brooks. So I will do like a formal introduction of myself and we take it from there. So thank you everybody for joining us at the World Oceans Day Summit, Virtual Summit for 2020. My name is Amanda Obidike and I'm the strategy lead for STEMI Makers Africa, where we are focused on boosting employment and empowering young Africans with STEM tools. So one of the expressions of STEM Makers Africa is having to design initiatives like this, virtual summits, where we bring in wonderful and well-seasoned professionals in STEM fields, whether from science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, to talk to young people on how to leverage on new STEM tools, new STEM opportunities, because STEM is a very lucrative field, and it's something that we usually encourage people to start integrating or start looking into taking in all the opportunities. So yeah, about the World Oceans Day, it's actually to create awareness and sensitize people about the crucial role the ocean plays in our everyday lives, and also for young people to start having this individual and collective commitment towards ensuring that our ocean is safe and the marine habitats are safe. So yeah, that's that about World Oceans Day. And what we want to do is, in order not to take much of our time, while each speaker is giving his or her own presentation, we would ensure to be taking in questions, and we will read out the questions to you. Is that okay? Hi, Kalisa.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, awesome. So we will begin at exactly 12:05. I think we still have 3 more minutes for the PAO to come in. And as soon as he comes in, we would read his profile bio, and he would start his session. Hi, Dr. Demilade.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Amanda. How are you?
Awesome. Good to see you all.
It's good to see you in person. Hi, Kalisa. How's it going?
Hi, Mark. How are you doing? I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. I'm awesome. It's so nice to see you guys. Amanda, we've been engaging for months.
Yeah, so you see that Twitter didn't really do much, because I still recognize you all, even on a live stream.
Yeah, really, for real though. Even though my face is not actually on Twitter, but oh wow.
Yeah. It's all good. Good to see you. Thank you so much for being part of this program.
I mean, it's great. I'm excited.
Okay. Thank you so much. So yeah, the PAO is actually running a little late, but he'll be joining us in let's say 2 minutes time. Then
Okay,
we begin.
that's absolutely fine. I have colleagues from ALA who are trying to connect to the program. So I'm just going to forward the email that you sent to me to them now. Okay. So I'll just tell them to join through the participants link.
Yeah, the live stream. They could join in through live streaming. Yes.
Okay, not a problem.
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Amanda.
Yes.
Amanda, this is Chibike. How many people will be in the meeting room?
Okay, so we just want to limit it to speakers, but would you like to come into the meeting room?
No. I'm just asking because I noticed we're just 5. So I want to know where the participants are.
Okay, so the participants are on the live stream. They're actually watching us. We are live now because of the number. We actually had a lot. We had like 920 people who signed up. So we moved them to YouTube.
Oh, okay, no problem. Thank you.
And are you ready to roll?
Okay, yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Yes, it's Amanda.
Yes,
You
I
can. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
We weren't sure.
Okay.
Okay. Then I am ready when you are.
Okay, so thank you so much for having to join us. I was just informing the audience about why we are doing this. And I would like to also thank the US government and the US consulate for partnering with us towards this program. Yes, and also thank you to our wonderful and well-seasoned professionals. We have a scientist in our midst. We have a South African, like the best African person that we have ever encountered in oceanography. So they will be engaging young people on about the World Oceans Day and why we need to play a crucial role in preserving our ocean. So I'm reading a little brief about Sir Russell because he's our first speaker for today. And yes, so Russell Brooks is the Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Consulate General in Lagos. He is a career diplomat, having served in Honduras, Peru, Washington, D.C., Iraq, Cote d'Ivoire, Abuja, and now Lagos. As the Public Affairs Officer, he heads the section of the consulate that manages press matters, cultural programs, educational and professional exchanges, grants, and Education USA office, and a collection of the American spaces in southern Nigeria. Russell attended the University of Pennsylvania, where he received a bachelor's degree in political science, and Seton Hall University, where he earned dual master's degree in international relations and international business. So thank you so much, Sarah Russell, for having to join us. We would love to hear from you, and we would.
Okay. Well, thank you for that warm introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to speak to you today. Thank you for inviting me to deliver some brief remarks today as we take some time out of our busy schedules to commemorate an important day, a day highlighting something key to our survival on this planet. I'm speaking of our oceans. We celebrate World Oceans Day to remind everyone of the role the oceans play in our everyday lives. They are the lungs of our planet, providing most of the oxygen we breathe. They are a major source of food and medicine and a critical part of the biosphere. Please recall that oceans serve as the world's largest source of protein, with more than 3 billion people depending on the oceans as their primary source of protein. Over 3 billion people depend on marine and coastal biodiversity for their livelihoods. Oceans absorb about 30% of carbon dioxide produced by humans, buffering the impacts of global warming. Oceans cover 3/4 of the Earth's surface, contain 97% of the Earth's water, and represent 99% of the living space on the planet by volume. The purpose of World Oceans Day is to inform the public of the impact of human actions on the ocean, develop a worldwide movement of citizens for the ocean, and mobilize and unite the world's population on a project for the sustainable management of the world's oceans. It is a day to celebrate together the beauty, the wealth, and the promise of the ocean. Careful management of this essential global resource is key to a sustainable future. However, at the current time, there is a continuous deterioration of coastal waters owing to pollution and ocean acidification, which has a negative effect on the functioning of marine ecosystems and biodiversity. Did you know that an estimated 8 million tons of plastic trash flow into our oceans every year. This debris entangles and kills seals and whales, has been ingested by 90% of seabirds, and has spread into every continental nook and cranny, including Arctic ice. Were you aware that overfishing has depleted 90% of large fish, such as tuna, swordfish, marlin, cod, halibut, skates, and flounder? Agricultural runoff and sewage have polluted coastal waters with nitrogen, phosphorus, and other algae-feeding nutrients, creating more than 500 dead zones globally. Warming ocean water is 26% more acidic than before the Industrial Revolution, killing coral reefs and shellfish. As the challenges to our oceans continue to grow, so do the need for novel solutions. To that end, the theme of this year's United Nations World Oceans Day is Innovation for a Sustainable Ocean. This year, World Oceans Day will shed light on innovations from around the globe that are both promising and proven, ones that instill optimism, and ones that have demonstrated the ability to scale effectively. It will also provide a platform for thought leaders of varied backgrounds who are paving new paths forward for the health of our oceans and our planet. Of course, I am a representative of the government of the United States, specifically the Department of State. And as you may naturally ask, what is the United States government doing to preserve and protect our oceans? That is a good question, and I'm pleased to answer it. I would like you to know that the U.S. Department of State has a bureau specifically dedicated to issues related to our oceans. It is the Bureau of Oceans and International Environmental and Scientific Affairs. Its mission is to advance America's security and prosperity through international leadership on oceans, environment, science, space, and health. Within that bureau are a number of different offices. Among them are the Office of Conservation and Water, the Office of Marine Conservation, and the Office of Ocean and Polar Affairs. Permit me to describe one of them, the Office of Ocean and Polar Affairs, or OPA. OPA is responsible for formulating and implementing U.S. policy on international issues concerning the ocean, the Arctic, and the Antarctic. With regard to the marine environment, OPA promotes economic security and environmental interests by advancing international efforts to conserve and sustainably use the ocean and its resources. In that regard, the Office of Ocean and Polar Affairs supports the Our Ocean conferences, which have spurred unprecedented action by the global community to fight marine pollution, acidification, unsustainable and illegal fishing, and to promote the blue economy and maritime security. The Our Ocean conferences focus on the key ocean issues of our time: marine protected areas, sustainable fisheries, marine pollution, and climate-related impacts on the ocean. OPA also works closely with a number of U.S. government agencies and indigenous communities to develop and coordinate U.S. policy related to the international conservation of marine mammals, notably whales and polar bears. Additionally, OPA works with U.S. government agencies, the private sector, academia, and NGO stakeholders to engage bilaterally, multilaterally, and regionally on marine debris. Marine debris generally refers to plastic pollution and is a critical global environmental issue that requires international collaboration. Oil spills account for a significant source of marine pollution around the world and can severely impact marine ecosystems. Due to U.S. expertise in oil spill response, the U.S. government is often asked to assist in responding to international oil spill incidents. Depending on the nature and location of the spill, the United States will try to offer appropriate assistance. The U.S. Coast Guard and the Environmental Protection Agency have primary responsibility for containing and cleaning up oil spills that occur in the waters of the United States and are usually the agencies that provide international oil spill assistance. When a formal request for such assistance is received, the Office of Ocean and Polar Affairs coordinates with the relevant U.S. government agencies to determine whether assistance should be provided and what are the assistance priorities. As you can see, the United States government is well aware and very much engaged in the protection and preservation of our oceans. It is playing a leadership role on one of the defining issues of our time. In Africa, environmental issues include desertification, deforestation, air pollution, as well as water pollution and overfishing, among others. The challenges are immense. Per the United Nations, over 75% of the world's fisheries are fully exploited, overexploited, or significantly depleted. Some species have already been fished to commercial extinction. Many more are on the verge. West African nations have some of the richest fishing grounds in the world, yet their food security is under threat. European and Asian fishing fleets have moved into West African waters over the past 30 years after depleting their own fish stocks. Sub-Saharan Africa is now the only region on Earth where per capita fish consumption is falling, partly because foreign fishing fleets have removed so much fish. Reportedly, 90% of the plastic in the world's oceans comes from Asia and Africa. This problem has reached crisis proportions, with an estimated 5 trillion pounds of plastic in the world's oceans. Certainly, as we view the waterways around Lagos, one has to be distressed about the amount of plastic pollution one views on a daily basis. According to the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the COVID-19 pandemic is a sharp reminder of how we are all intimately connected to each other and to nature. As we work to end the pandemic and build back better, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity and responsibility to correct our relationship with the natural world, including the world's seas and oceans. On this World Oceans Day, I hope all of us will pledge to act constructively in any way we can, individually, as families, and in our respective organizations, to protect our oceans. We live on one planet, and it is the responsibility of all of us to preserve it for future generations. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and it's well appreciated. We do have tons of questions for you already, and I trust that this will go well, and I will take them bit by bit. And yes, so, okay. So the first question is, we often hear the term the blue economy used in relation of the importance of preserving our oceans. Can you please explain the term and its relations to Nigerians?
Interesting question to begin with. So I'll give you the World Bank's definition of that term. The blue economy is the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods, and jobs while preserving the health of the ocean ecosystem. So how would that relate to Nigeria? Well, we often talk about Nigeria diversifying its economy. We talk about improving public health. We talk about a variety of things. Well, the ocean and the condition of the ocean or Nigeria's coastal waters plays a very important role in any of those things. In terms of the economy, Nigerians also depend for their livelihoods on the use of the ocean. Fishing is obviously one of them. We are concerned about the environment along the coastal waters. So we have so many ships that ply through these waters. We have to be concerned about any waste, any garbage, any pollution that those ships may be contributing toward. The condition of the oceans is critical for Nigeria's health and welfare, just as it is for countries around the entire world.
Okay, thank you so much. So going to the second question, throughout the lagoon in Lagos, we see a great deal of plastic pollution in the waterways. What do you think we can do to start reversing these threats to our coasts, our oceans, and to the marine life?
Thank you. I would suggest that Nigerians, or in particular those who live around the waterways, have to take ownership of their environment. It is not enough to suggest that the government needs to do more, even though that may be certainly true, or that the private sector should be more responsible, even though that may be correct. I believe we have to ask every individual, as I mentioned, to change their own mindset, to change their own behavior in order to produce a cleaner environment. An individual can refrain from placing their bottles or their plastic waste into the water or into various drainages that will lead to rivers or lead to the lagoon, lead to different waterways. Individuals have to take ownership. They have to take responsibility and do what they can, however they can, to produce a better environment.
Yes, I really do agree on that. We have this individual responsibility to preserve our ocean. Now, yes, so globally, oil spills are a major threat to the marine ecosystem. Does the US government provide assistance to other countries as they deal with this problem?
Yes, we do. As I mentioned in my remarks, two agencies play a very, very significant role in providing that sort of technical expertise, maybe human resources, to help countries when these oil spills occur. We have developed a lot of expertise in that area. And so the Environmental Protection Agency, that is the lead environmental organization within the United States government, the U.S. Coast Guard, which is not only a military service, but also performs a lot of civilian, both law enforcement roles as well as environmental protection roles. They have developed a lot of ability to assist countries, and therefore the State Department, as the lead diplomatic agency, will certainly play a role in coordinating the assistance that they can provide with the foreign nations that may need that assistance.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, speaking about conservation fisheries, the conservation of fisheries is another issue with international dimensions. Can you provide some insights on why this issue is so important?
Well, again, overfishing, especially in the West Africa area, but off the coast of Africa and other regions as well, is a huge issue. It's an environmental issue in terms of its impact on certain species of fish. It's also a contributor to criminality, to violence, to terrorism. If you recall, one of the rationales for the increase in piracy off of Somalia for quite a few years was the fact that foreign fishing fleets had depleted the fishing stocks off of Somalia. That directly affected the livelihoods of those who traditionally were fishermen in that country. Unfortunately, these former fishermen turned to another source of potential income: maritime piracy, maritime criminality, kidnapping. For a while, it was quite a profitable enterprise until the world governments and navies really engaged in a crackdown on that practice. What I'm saying is that, again, this overfishing has a variety of impacts, environmental and otherwise. It's a negative effect. It is something that is correctable, and that countries around the world have to pay more attention to it, both its environmental and its economic and other impacts.
Thank you. So I read that the former Secretary of State, John Kerry, spoke at our Ocean Wealth Summit in 2019. Can we know what this summit was all about?
Yes, our former Secretary of State was quite committed to working to encourage international cooperation in the preservation of our oceans. And that particular conference took place in Ireland in June of 2019. It brought together individuals and organizations that were concerned with devising innovative and sustainable solutions in order to have global impact on the, quote, blue economy. So that was the purpose for that particular conference.
Okay. So the Secretary Kerry, served in the Obama administration. What did the former president have to say about the importance of our oceans? Okay,
that's a great question. Well, I think Secretary Kerry, former Secretary Kerry, had a big influence on the former president. In terms of Secretary Kerry, he grew up in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is in the northeast of the United States on our Atlantic coast. It has a great tradition of seafaring and fishing. And the Secretary claimed that he became passionate about the ocean from the age of 3 when he first, stuck his toe in the water. And he also served in the Navy for quite a few years. So the former president says that oftentimes he would raise issues concerning the oceans and the environment in their meetings in the White House. And so the president spoke at the 2016 Our Oceans Conference. And I'll read you a passage from his speech at the conference. He said, referring to the oceans and the condition of the oceans, "It is the dominant feature of our planet. It is why we share a blue marble as opposed to a brown or gray one. Our oceans feed us, protect us, regulate our climate, our weather, anchor industries from transportation to tourism to trade of all kinds. The health of our planet's oceans determine in large part the health of our own bodies and the health of our economies. And while it is our ocean's contours that shape our coastlines, it is what we decide and do here that will shape our ocean's future." So the president was quite enthusiastic about doing what he could during his administration to emphasize the importance of preserving our oceans.
Thank you. So I'm very concerned about the wildlife conservation. Is the preservation of marine species such as polar bears or the manatees an important aspect of the U.S. policy?
Yes, it is. Wildlife conservation writ large is a key component of U.S. foreign policy. And the same bureau in the State Department that is concerned with oceans also takes the lead on matters concerning wildlife preservation, concerning the preservation and conservation of fauna of all types, etc. The diplomats in that bureau attend international conferences and advocate for the protection of wildlife, including polar bears, manatees, and many, many others. So we consider that certainly a very important aspect of our diplomacy on an international and a bilateral basis.
Okay, thank you. So you represent the U.S. government, but are U.S. private organizations such as NGOs, foundations, and universities engaged also in saving our oceans?
Yes, that's an excellent question. In fact, there are numerous American organizations outside of the government that do tremendous work to raise awareness and inspire people to take action to preserve our oceans. So I'll just name a few. One, Ocean Conservancy is a Washington, D.C. based advocacy group working to protect special marine habitats and the restoration of sustainable fisheries. It also interestingly brings volunteers together from around the world to clean beaches. There's the New York City-based Natural Resources Defense Council, which is a nonprofit international environmental advocacy group that works to protect the oceans from pollution and exploitation. And they really work on supporting the implementation of laws that help to save marine life, including allowing overfished species to rebound. And then there's Oceana, a Washington, D.C. based conservation and advocacy organization committed to saving and restoring oceans through targeted policy campaigns. It was founded in 2001. It's the largest international advocacy organization exclusively working for the conservation of the ocean. The organization carries out targeted campaigns to prevent the collapse of fish populations, marine mammals, and other damages to sea life resulting from industrial fishing and pollution. So even though I work on behalf of the government, it's important to note that a wide variety of organizations in the private sector, the NGO community, academic community, et cetera, are very concerned about this issue and very, very engaged in trying to do good work. Is there another question?
So so I will ask this about you serve as the public affairs officer, and you work with a lot of press. You work with the press. What do you think they should be doing to raise awareness about the state of our beaches, the coastal waters, and the oceans?
Well, we certainly want journalists to report more about these issues because, as I said from the beginning, this is one of the most important issues, maybe one of the issues that will affect our survival on the planet. Reporters, in order to report and report effectively on this issue, have to learn more about it. They have to learn about the issues. They have to learn about the organizations that are working on the issues. They have to learn about these innovative solutions. They have to educate themselves. If they properly educate themselves, and they will be much, much more effective in conveying the importance of the issue and what is being done to the general public. So I would say that's the most important thing. Journalists have to take a serious interest in this issue and learn as much as they possibly can about it in all of its dimensions.
Okay, thank you. So does the public affairs session, do they provide grants to support creative setting initiatives in Nigeria? Sorry. Would your office support an initiative focused on raising public awareness, for example, about preserving our oceans and waterways?
We absolutely would. If we think this is such an important issue and that people need to be made more aware of what they can do about the issue, then certainly we would support those local organizations, those local individuals that are working hard to raise that awareness. That's only logical. So yes, we have a grants program within the public affairs section here in Lagos. We also have a grants program that operates out of our embassy in Abuja, and we look forward to supporting the initiatives of local organizations on a variety of topics. Most times we get proposals on things other than the environment. Maybe they're cultural programs, maybe they're media training programs, but we are also very much interested in the environment and what can be done to raise awareness about the environment. So yes, please do send in proposals. And if we deem those proposals to be viable, if they are reasonable in what they're trying to accomplish, reasonable in terms of budget, it would be our pleasure to support them.
Thank you. So I know that you are responsible for academic exchange programs, so and professional exchange programs. Can you imagine nominating someone to participate in a professional exchange program focused on the marine environment?
Yes, I can. Similar to what I said about grants, it would be our pleasure to support individuals who have a deep interest in the environment, who maybe are pursuing some type of academic research project that relates to the environment and its impact here in Nigeria. Maybe it's a professional, possibly in the government, working on in an environmental agency that would like to learn about what the United States is doing in that area. I could imagine that person looking for an opportunity to spend some time learning what we are doing in the Environmental Protection Agency, our Coast Guard, the State Department. The State Department's bureau that's focused on the oceans and science. Spending some time with them, understanding what they're doing and why, and then bringing back that information, those skills to Nigeria and applying them here. I can very much imagine that. So we have a variety of exchange programs, whether we're talking about the International Visitors Leadership Program, the Fulbright, the Mandela Washington Fellows. I can go on, but I won't spend all your time talking about exchange programs. But the bottom line is, yes, someone who wants to apply to one of those programs specifically because they have an environmental interest or passion, yes, we would very much encourage that person to apply and try to become involved in one of those programs.
Okay, thank you. So we have one more question. Sorry about that. And yeah, someone had to share this. They asked how can the U.S. Embassy support researchers that are working on marine pollution in Nigeria?
Researchers. Well, I would probably say that that researcher should look into one of the exchange programs that I just mentioned. The Fulbright program as one example, asks African scholars to apply and to propose research topics that they are going to pursue during their time in the United States. Okay? One of those research programs or projects might be something that is environmentally related. Now, the Fulbright program is an example of one of those private sector initiatives that I was describing. It's not a purely governmental program. So that researcher will submit his proposal, and a panel composed of academically qualified individuals will review it. They will determine whether it's something that they deem worthy of supporting, and then they may offer the opportunity for that researcher to pursue that project in the United States. So that's one option. If you're asking us to sort of subsidize his research in this country, well, again, always bear in mind what we do as a governmental entity and what is the province of other either areas of the U.S. society. So as the U.S. government, specifically the State Department, we are very unlikely to subsidize anyone's research. But in terms of that person being able to pursue their research with maybe a academic institution, that is certainly something that is possible to do.
Okay. So thank you so much, Sarusel. That should be all for today. We really appreciate the U.S. government for availing themselves for this program. And we also thank World Oceans Day alongside UNESCO for having to collaborate with us in bringing such a wonderful program like this. So thank you, sir. And we really do appreciate this, your presence.
You are very much welcome. Again, it is my pleasure. Thank you all for attending. To everyone, let's really, really make this a great World Oceans Day 2020. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes, thank you. So yes, moving to our second session. I know quite a number of us are looking forward to this session. And going into our session, we have the inspiring 50 South African nominee for 2019 and a Black Women in Science South Africa Fellow on board, Dr. Kolisa, So I'll quickly read in her profile bio before she comes in. So Dr. Colisa is a PhD candidate in oceanography at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. Her work critically examines the biochemistry of the ocean, especially that of understudied regions. In her PhD research, she uses nitrogen isotopes to look at how the ocean makes the planet habitable. That's awesome. So Colisa represents South Africa as one of the keynote speakers at 2019 World COP placed in Spain, Madrid. She was also the only Black South African woman scientist speaker at the 2020 Ocean Science Meeting, which was held in San Diego, California, in the United States. Colisa has vast experience as a science communicator in the field of marine sciences, with a great love for ocean and ocean-related sciences. Wow. Thank you so much. So Colisa will be coming on board, and we actually will advise people to start dropping in your questions on the chat box so that we collate everything and share to our speaker. So Dr. Colisa, are you ready?
It's not doctor yet, but I'm ready.
Oh, awesome. Okay. It's in the process then. Yeah, thank you so much. So, yes.
All right, where do I share my screen? Okay. Share. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Amanda. And I'd like to say that this is a massive opportunity. Being a keynote speaker is something I never imagined. But my name is Colisa Sinyanya, and I am a PhD candidate at one of the most prominent research institutions in the world, the University of Cape Town in South Africa. And today I have been invited by STEMI to speak for World Oceans Day under the theme, The Science We Need for the Ocean We Want. I have been tasked with talking about innovation for a sustainable ocean. And truly, innovation plays a huge role in us understanding our global ocean, as this is key for intricately uncovering how our ocean works, who is in our global ocean, what are they doing, and how they are doing it. So I couldn't possibly talk about ocean innovation and sustainability without talking about naturally occurring phytoplankton. And honestly, there are two questions that I get asked a lot in my life, and those are, is that your real hair? And the other one is, what the heck are phytoplankton? So I've made it my task to talk about phytoplankton, what phytoplankton are, tell people what they look like. And so phytoplankton are these microscopic organisms that live predominantly on the surface ocean, where it's sunlit. We call it the euphotic zone. And they need the sun because they photosynthesize. And by photosynthesizing, I mean that they take up carbon dioxide and use it to make their own food, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Phytoplankton come in different shapes and sizes. And They can be in the form of cyanobacteria, diatoms, which are the bigger ones, the dinoflagellates, green algae, coccolithophores, and they have preferences for different environments. The different types of phytoplankton communities have different types of environmental preferences, and this will be evident as we go along in my talk. Phytoplankton are also very important in our planet functioning well, our planet being habitable, basically. And as we heard from the previous speaker, they play a role in food security as they are the primary producers. And I always compare them with plants on the terrestrial environment, because plants also play a role as primary producers. So are phytoplankton. However, phytoplankton play an even bigger role because every other ecosystem depends solely on the success of phytoplankton. So with such a wide audience and diverse audience, I thought ocean fun facts were a must. And the previous speaker has already spoken about some of these facts, but let's talk about the ones from this presentation. And basically our ocean covers more than 75% of our Earth's surface, which means there's more water on planet Earth than there is land. Over 70% of our planet's oxygen is produced by the ocean. And we know that the phytoplankton are basically in charge of this functioning. The majority of life on Earth is aquatic. And it's quite interesting because we don't know majority of these species that occur on our planet because they are underwater, and a lot of those have not been discovered yet. The Pacific Ocean is the world's oldest, largest, and deepest ocean basin. It is also the most nutrient rich. And for me, this is very important because my research as a scientist in the ocean, the marine and ocean industries focuses a lot in nutrients and how the microbial communities within the ocean utilize these nutrients. Less than 5% of the planet's oceans have been explored. And this is quite interesting because when we look at all these papers that are written and ocean research, you would think it's a higher number, but it's just 5% when we compare to other research areas. For example, when we talk about land, we know way more about the land than we do about our oceans. Also, one of my favorite facts about the ocean is that it is the biggest absorber of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Now, we always hear about trees making our planet habitable and stealing all the shine, but we hear very little about the ocean and the phytoplankton playing a role in this carbon uptake. And really, these are the ones that we should be glorifying, because the ocean takes up about 93% of the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And if you think about 1 ton and just the magnitude of that size, and think about the ocean pumping 10 gigatons per year into the ocean's interior of carbon dioxide, that is massive. So the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide than all the world's forests combined. To progress innovation for a sustainable ocean, a warming planet, innovative scientific research plays a central role. And of course, ocean sciences or marine sciences come in different forms and shapes. It's multidisciplinary. It involves research on ocean satellites, on ocean modeling, microplastics, ocean acidification, polar research, and algal biofuels. In fact, last year I was invited as a speaker at the South African National Energy Association for their Carbon Tax Colloquium, because they wanted me to come up with ways to use phytoplankton in the energy industry. So these are innovative ways for sustaining the ocean and using ocean-based microbes to improve our industries in a warming planet. Additionally, I would like in this presentation to talk about Ocean Women, which is a fellowship that was formulated in the University of Cape Town here in South Africa by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng. And you will hear more about this initiative as I go along, but I could not talk about innovation for a sustainable ocean and not involve this fellowship, which brings in Black women into oceanography. And oceanography, as we know, is an industry or a field of science that lacks a lot of Black people. However, today I'll be focusing mostly on my PhD research. And my research, therefore, intricately examines how the ocean, the microbial communities, and the biogeochemical cycles respond to changes that are brought about by climate change, hence warming planet. So my research couples stable nitrogen isotopes, as you can see there in the yellow, N14 and N15. It couples, this is one of the studies I have conducted in my PhD. It couples nitrogen isotopes with a type of flow cytometry, which is known as fluorescence activated cell sorting. Basically, this technique was developed in 2011 at Princeton University by Dr. Sarah Fawcett, who is now my PhD supervisor and mentor. So this combination allows us to understand how productive the ocean regions are. It also allows us to measure the carbon export potential. And by this, I mean that it allows us to understand how the ocean plays a role in taking up the carbon dioxide and pumping it into the deep ocean. So by coupling these two techniques, isotopic analyses and FACS, we can combine the phytoplankton communities with these techniques and see how the phytoplankton communities take up the different sources of nitrogen, because nitrogen is an important nutrient in the taking up of this carbon dioxide by the ocean or by the phytoplankton and pumping into the deep ocean. And therefore, these techniques allow us to know that the phytoplankton have taken up nitrate. And if it's nitrate, therefore, it means there was carbon drawdown or the carbon uptake has taken place. If the phytoplankton have taken up ammonium, it means there is no carbon drawdown because this is a type of nitrogen that does not play a role in the carbon drawdown. And within my PhD research, my phytoplankton that I am interested in are the small eukaryotes, which are smaller than 20 micrometers, and the Synechococcus. And these communities have different preferences, as I have pointed out earlier, when it comes to environmental conditions and responses to nutrient uptake. They therefore tell a story of how ocean productivity and carbon drawdown potential could be happening within the ocean. So my study site or area of interest is the Agulhas Current. And the Agulhas Current basically flows south along the east coast of South Africa. The physics and the hydrography of this region is well or extensively studied. However, the biogeochemistry is not yet well understood. And this is where my research comes in, because it looks at the biogeochemistry of the ocean. This region has the fastest flowing current in the world, and we believe that this has implications on nutrient supply and therefore the functioning of the ecosystem. And the goal of my novel work is to use this region to characterize the biogeochemistry of the Agulhas Current and the surrounding marine systems. It is also to understand how the current influences nutrient cycling and phytoplankton productivity in the subtropical Indian Ocean waters of south of South Africa, because these are subtropical waters. So to conduct our research, we have to go to the regions. And here you see a photo of the SA Agulhas 2, which is our research vessel. And we use this vessel to go out there and do the sampling. This is a second generation icebreaker, and it goes to all these regions, including the polar regions. And we conduct some of our analyses on board because we have laboratories within the vessel itself. Another part of my research looks at how the ocean takes up these different nutrients and how it takes up the carbon itself. So I use uptake rates to look at these, looking at per hour, per day, how it does this. And here you are looking at the biological pump. And in its simplest form, the biological pump is the ocean's biologically driven ability to pump carbon dioxide into the deep ocean, to the ocean's interior, the ocean floor, and keep it there for say, thousands of years. We need to understand how this happens and at what rates per hour and per day to make well-informed, educated decisions. So I calculate these rates looking at different size classes of phytoplankton communities in order to understand who is doing what and how they are doing it. So these are the size classes involved in my other study, which involves uptake rates. I look at how the bulk communities, which is the integrated phytoplankton communities, do the work, because the different sizes do different work. And so we need to understand who is doing what, at what rate, and how they are doing it. So overall, my PhD research has a role in the innovation for a sustainable ocean. And basically, it allows us to understand how the various phytoplankton communities in the Agulhas marine system take up different nitrogen sources. And by this, it means when we look at the nitrate and ammonium I showed you earlier, we are able to understand who is taking what type of nitrogen source, and therefore we will understand whether the region is playing a role in carbon uptake or not. Also, my research reveals how productive this ocean region is and how the fast-flowing current affects its productivity. So basically, from our results from my PhD study, we are shown that this area is it shows us which areas are most productive, and that the current seems to be enhancing this productivity. So the Agulhas current is playing a major role in these carbon uptake processes that are happening within the subtropical ocean. And therefore this has implications on the entire global ocean. My research also tells a tale of the rate at which this marine system takes up both nitrogen sources and carbon. And this, of course, is by or through the uptake rates experiments, which show us the rates per hour and per day by different phytoplankton groups in terms of sizes. And overall, my research helps us understand what role phytoplankton, nutrients, biogeochemical cycling plays within the warming ocean. So to come back to ocean women, I would like to talk more about it because it is an advancing, it's part of the Advancing Women Initiative from the University of Cape Town. It's an advancing fellowship, which gives opportunities to especially Black women and women of color who were previously not afforded such opportunities in ocean sciences. And Ocean Women is headed by PI and NRF peer-rated researcher, Dr. Katie Altieri, who is an aerosol expert based at the University of Cape Town. In fact, she is in my department, in the oceanography department at UCT. And the research that is taking place within Ocean Women is diverse. It takes place in diverse fields of ocean sciences and atmospheric sciences. And we know that when we marry the two, the one cannot survive much without the other. And these include atmosphere research, which involves aerosols and weather and climate studies, biological processes, which are coupled with oceanographic ocean modeling, and of course, some of my work, which looks at the biogeochemical cycling. I also thought I should share a few opportunities with the world because there are numerous opportunities within ocean sciences. And just to share a few, please look up POGO, the Partnership for Observation of the Global Ocean. They have really great initiatives on exchange programs. They have great initiatives on ocean-based workshops. They have training courses, seagoing opportunities, and for oceanographers, seagoing experience is very key. Also, take some time to look at more training courses, which include, I don't know if it's GIMMS in Africa. UMETSAT also has some great training, and it's top of the range science or ocean science, predominantly satellite ocean science based opportunities. don't forget to be part of your societies. And in my case, one of the societies I'm part of is the Oceanography Society. And when I was in the United States for Ocean Sciences meeting, which is a meeting that happens every 2 years, I was fortunate enough to be invited by the Oceanography Society for a breakfast. And honestly, it wasn't just about the breakfast. It was about the networking, the getting to be introduced to other ocean scientists who are more esteemed than I am, getting to see what other topics I could dive into in the future and what other opportunities are there for me when I finish my PhD. So don't forget to be part of these societies. Also, look up summer schools in your areas of specialization. My supervisor always says, when I want to go to all these things, these summer schools and conferences, she always reminds me that you have to choose the specific one that will build you in your specific field. And honestly, when I started, I wasn't thinking of it like that. I just wanted to go to things. I just wanted to attend ocean events. But I saw what she meant, because you get to see what other, for example, in my case, other isotope geochemists do and how they solve problems that I may encounter or have encountered on my path. And lastly, I really would like to ask for World Oceans Day, and not just for World Oceans Day, but I would like to ask everyone what their role is in making sure that we have a sustainable ocean, because we all play a role, and it's our responsibility to make sure that our ocean is sustainable as it carries us. We all depend, our life, our planet depends on the success of the ocean. And the warmer it becomes, the more acidic it gets. And the phytoplankton are at risk. And so please ask yourself this question: what is my role? Finally, I would like to thank all our collaborators and my funders, especially Dr. Sarah Fawcett, who is my PhD supervisor and mentor. And I'd also like to thank STEMI for inviting me today. This is huge. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kolisa. We really do appreciate your time. And we have one question for you. This is from an audience, if you don't mind. She's asking, is it possible to reproduce phytoplankton outside the ocean waters?
I get asked this question a lot. Last year, I gave a TED talk, and someone in the audience asked me if they can grow their own phytoplankton. And honestly, phytoplankton needs to be in their billions to be able to function. And they need a type of environment to be able to be successful, to do what needs to happen, and that is to be functional, really. So in terms of growing your own phytoplankton, I don't, let me say no for now, but with innovation, and thankfully this is part of my talk today, innovation. With innovation, we might be able to do this in the future. But right now, as I said earlier, I was invited to speak about how phytoplankton can play a role in the energy industry. And therefore, I had to come up with ways in which we could take, say, for example, phytoplankton from the ocean and pump it into these tiny pools that can be managed. When I say managed, I'm talking about the temperatures, the nutrient supply, and in my opinion, I think that's how we can grow our own phytoplankton.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So so another one came in, and it's the theme for this year's World Oceans Day is innovation for a sustainable ocean. So as we explore innovations across categories, including technology, systems infrastructure, resource management, consumer products, finance, and scientific exploration, how can these innovations be applied? What are their potential impact, for example, and the resources needed to transform them into a long-lasting solution? I think that's quite a lot.
It is, it's a mouthful. But just to answer that with a short answer, I would say science plays a huge role in partnership with technology. They play a huge role in development of new techniques, new strategies, new innovative ways to do all these things. And so if we apply these methods, and with each new method, we will find problems. We will find things that don't work, say, for example, for this ocean basin, but will work for another ocean basin, for example. And so to keep it sustainable, we have to improve. We have to be constantly trying to improve our innovations. We can't just say develop something today and think, okay, that's it, we're done. No, just like science improves every day, so does the innovation, so does the technology, and so does so do the applications to keep our ocean sustainable.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I have two here again. Are there similar organisms like phytoplanktons living in lakes and rivers?
Yes, there are phytoplankton in lakes and rivers. There are different species that are found in different environments, as I have said in my talk today. And some species you will find in both the ocean, in the rivers. Some will be across all the water resources, really. So phytoplankton are diverse, and they can be found all over.
Thank you. So I would quickly share the last question, and although this is centered on policies, so he's asking what remedies should be undertaken in the framework of and as part of our wider regional and global agreement policies aimed at the sustainable development of our entire coastal and ocean environment.
I didn't hear the question. Can you repeat your question, please?
Okay, yeah, so he's asking what remedies should be undertaken in the framework of and as part of a wider regional and global agreement that is aimed at the sustainable development of our entire coastal and ocean environment.
All right, thank you for the question. Well, at the center of it all, the science is the framework we have to be looking at, because The science we do is to intricately understand how everything functions. And therefore, we will be able to advise policymakers. Sometimes we as scientists are the policymakers. And so the basics of it all, the changes, the sustainability, understanding how everything works, and that involves us scientists. And so we go out there and tell the governments, the NGOs, and whoever else needs to be advised on how to manage our resources.
Wow. Yeah, so thank you so much, Kolisa. I think that should be all for your session. And we really do appreciate your time and this slides. We would ensure to, if you can send us the slide, we will ensure to add it in the emails for those who are not part of this live, so that they can go through the opportunities you shared. So yes, thank you so much for this.
Thank you too for inviting me.
Yes, and you could quickly share your Twitter handle in case of anybody wants to follow you, to still keep abreast of your work that you do in oceanography.
Okay, where can I share it? Oh, like say it here.
Okay, yes.
Okay, it's at Kolie, KOLIE _ Yola, YOLA. So at Kolie _ Yola.
Okay, thank you. We can also share that in the emails we send out today. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Cheers.
So, wow. So we are rounding off soon. We have a last session, and that's the third session. We have Dr. Demilade from, she's a Nigerian though, but she works in South Africa. So I will be reading her bio quickly. She said that her team in science is not enough. So I'm excited. I want to know, okay, what's enough then? Yeah, so Dr. Demilade Fayemiwo, sorry if I don't want to murder names, is an engineering scientist with a PhD degree in chemical engineering. She's recipient of the 2017 L'Oreal UNESCO Women in Science Fellowship and winner of the University of Johannesburg's 2018 3-minute thesis competition. She currently works at a leadership academy in Johannesburg, South Africa, where she leads the science research program and educates young students from various African countries. So ladies and gentlemen, please let's welcome Dr. Demilade as she begins her session.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And Kolisa, thank you for that very interesting presentation on phytoplankton. It's been a while since I heard all of that. So like Amanda said, my name is Demilade, Dr. Demi, to many who know me. I work at the African Leadership Academy. I lead the science research program, and I'm also a science educator. And today, I deliberately selected that topic. Obviously, because I knew it would get everybody thinking, oceans, no science, what's going on? I'm not in oceanography by any stretch of the imagination, but I focused on water quality and sanitation throughout my PhD study. And I've also worked with the Water Research Commission in South Africa on projects that address water issues, including climate change, how to keep the oceans or the rivers clean, and how to ensure that people in informal settlements have access to water. So what I'm going to be sharing today is basically a perspective that's not very scientific, because when you work in certain spaces, you tend to see there's something else that goes on beyond the science. And that's what I hope I can share with you all today. So I prepared some slides. I just need to be able to share my screen. Just give me a minute here. Let's see. Yeah, this is something that happens a lot in my classroom, where it's, oh, I need to share my screen, but the screen just refuses to be shared. Let me see. Let's just make that a. Okay, here we go. It's on now. I hope everybody can see this. So my topic today is that science is not enough to save the oceans. And I came to that conclusion after trying to understand all the interlinking factors that would affect sustainable oceans. So like I said, I work at African Leadership Academy. I lead science research program. The academy recruits students from 46 African countries. So it's a very diverse space, and you get to hear lots of opinions when you work in such a space. I got my bachelor's degree from Stellenbosch University here in South Africa. Went on to do a master's at the University of Pretoria, where I did a master's in environmental technology, and then went on to UJ and did a PhD in chemical engineering. So I've had a bit of an academic tour, if you want to call it that. I also worked at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg before my PhD, and then just went on to work at ALA. That's what we call African Leadership Academy. For people who don't know, when they see the abbreviation ALA, they say ALA, but to us people who work at ALA, that would sound really odd, so it's just ALA. Okay, cool. First things first, when we speak of innovation for sustainable oceans, the big question for me is why our understanding of innovation matters. So I'm sure we all know this phone. And if you don't, you need to call me mama. I'm kidding. But we know this phone, right? And we went from that to phones that look like this. I actually had one of these when I was finishing high school. So it was quite good. It looked like a calculator. I mean, but everybody loved it because then you had a phone. This is something people didn't really have, a mobile phone. And then from there, we went on to this and to this. And now I don't think we can imagine phones that don't look like what's on here. But what that made me realize is that when we speak about innovation, we tend to think of it only in the sector of technology. And so when people say innovation, we immediately think, oh, something technological. So when we're talking to people across the world today and we're saying, let's innovate for sustainable oceans, I bet you somebody's already thinking of something that has a pump, has a plug or a battery that we can put into the ocean that's going to fix things. But we know that is not necessarily what's going to work. So in that case, what will work? Because I mean, this is great. This technology is great. This is also science, but it's not necessarily what we need to save the oceans. So the first thing I think of when I think about sustainable oceans is I link it back immediately to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and what exactly is linked with it. Obviously, you can bring out lots of links when you look at the SDGs. You can probably link up to 4 or 5 or even 6 of them together. But something that really stands out, or the goals that really stand out to me, are the links between sustainable oceans, the life that we live on land as people, and clean water and sanitation. Those are 3 things that are linked, whether we like it or not. But when we talk about them, and sometimes I get mad at the UN for separating these things because I feel like we need to have what we call integrated water and land management. Okay, but I mean, it's separate cool. So when I think about life below water, which is what you might link to sustainable oceans, I always ask myself, well, how does the ocean go bad? What happens? I mean, the ocean just doesn't wake up and decides to go crazy. I mean, if you're dealing with bacteria, that's what happens. I did a BSc in microbiology, so I can tell you that that's a real thing. Your bacteria just becomes temperamental and decides it's not going to do what you want today, so you have to deal with that. But the ocean doesn't do that. There are events that lead to it. And most of these events come from the life that we live on land and what happens in our water and sanitation sector. So I'm going to pick life on land as a starter. If you live in Nigeria or in India, if you've been to India, this is a common occurrence in your life. You spend about 4 hours of your life in traffic. Koliswa, you're very lucky. Cape Town is amazing. While I was in Stellenbosch, I think it was the slowest pace of my life. You know, I could leave my home at 20 minutes before my meeting, get there on time, That doesn't happen in Lagos. So you're going somewhere that's 20 minutes drive away, you spend an hour in traffic, and then you get to the gate of where you're going and you argue with the security guard, and that's a whole different story. So this is a common occurrence. And when you're sitting in this situation in a very hot weather, the next thing you think of is, ooh, I need me a bottle of water because I'm thirsty and this is going to take a while. So you drink that, but you're not aware that most of your plastic bottles and all these things that you consume would end up there. And something interesting that I have found is that it takes 450 years to decompose a plastic bottle, just one. So imagine if we were to count the cars in this traffic picture, in the first picture, and we assumed that there were, say, 2 people in each car, and each person bought a bottle of water, right? And after buying that bottle of water, they dispose that, they don't know what happens to the bottle. How much are we contributing to plastic pollution of the oceans if we're thinking about that? And how many years would it take for that to degrade if this happens on a daily basis? But that's not the only thing. Let's talk about clean water and sanitation. Now, in oil producing countries, you know that there are oil rigs and there are lots of oil spills. And like the consular said, when you speak about the oil spills, we always hear about the big ones, like the Gulf of Mexico. Oh my God, so many tons of oil. But there are many oil spills that happen on a daily basis that nobody talks about because they're just small, so we ignore them. We have issues of sanitation. And when I speak of sanitation in this respect, I'm speaking about sewage sanitation. Nobody wants to hear that because you don't want to hear that, you know, when you do your number 2, sometimes it just flows down into the ocean and kills some poor fish that had nothing to do with you. But that's what happens, especially in areas where water treatment plants are not functional. So when I was working with the Water Research Commission, one of the projects that we had to do was to find out why informal settlements were polluting the river because, you know, downstream, there were these affluent suburbs where people lived and they could now smell the poop from the informal settlement. So everybody got bothered. And it was a matter of, oh no, it smells like poop in front of my 5 million rand home. But it's not just about your home. We're talking about a situation where people don't have access to sanitation. And so where does that lead? It all leads into the rivers, which inevitably connect to the oceans. So we also have household sanitation. That's a big problem. Some people don't have any places to dispose their municipal waste. And so it ends up in drainages and somehow gets carted off to the rivers. Industrial pollution is a thing. Some industries don't even treat their wastewater. They just shoot into the ocean, it goes. They believe that the dilution effect will take care of it. So these are some of, I mean, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the issues that I'm trying to bring out to paint a picture as to why sustainable oceans is such a big deal and why World Oceans Day exists. So it didn't exist because people just fell in love with fish and they're like, oh, they're so cute. So, you know, let's just save them. No, there's so many issues that go on around that leads to these problems. But obviously, something I'm learning very interestingly, after being a scientist for so many years, is that sometimes people don't care about stuff until they know those things will affect them. So how does life below water affect us as people? Because if I were to say to you, you know, the big white whale is dying. I mean, if I were to go to a country where people don't have good relationships with waters, and I'm like, oh, the big whales are dying, everybody's going to be like, well, we're also dying. So what's your point? So obviously, because we don't know how we're affected, we tend not to take these issues seriously. Now, when you have issues of pollution, for example, we have something in fish and in seafood called bioaccumulation, which means that they consume the harmful products that we put into the oceans, okay? It accumulates within their bodies, and then when we consume them, we end up with a whole range of problems. And some of the problems we end up with, I mean, these days, I don't know about y'all, but I feel like there are a lot of people who are just tired these days. And we don't know why we're tired. Some people say, oh, it's because you're over 30. But, you know, there are people over 30 who are also looking fly as hell. So what's going on? We have issues with digestive problems. We have cardiovascular disease. There are respiratory problems, reproductive effects. This is something many people don't talk about often because we don't know that some of the problems from plastic leaching is that it affects the hormones of women. And so when we have that hormonal imbalance, we have women who have issues like endometriosis, issues like fibroid growths that they cannot explain. and basically just reproductive problems that cannot be addressed by us just looking at them as people and not connecting them to the environment. We also have issues with cancer. I mean, there are many cancers that are coming to light and increasing in rate of occurrence. And so these are the ways where our activities within the land with our sanitation, linking that to the ocean, how they're beginning to affect us as people. Overfishing is also a big problem. And this is something that we don't discuss, especially if you live in a developing region where it's coastal. I mean, if you live in Lagos, I miss Lagos for the fish. I don't know about South Africa, and I'm not dissing anybody, Kuliswa. I mean, you guys are great. I love it. I've lived here for more than 10 years. But the fish variety here is just so shockingly abysmal. There was a time I bought fish from a fishery, and it was called the Pangasius. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. It's like pockets of water when you're eating it. And I'm like, why am I not in Lagos? Because I love fish. But in regions where we rely so much on seafood menus, we tend to have overfishing because people love the fish and people don't understand the balance of diversity. So we take out a certain species of fish and we end up with a problem whereby the diversity is off balance. So, and I put this here. So if, for example, we were to remove all the trout in the ocean and the tuna, because, you know, we just love eating those, what then happens to the shark? What does it feed on, right? And I mean, that means that the salmon becomes easy prey for maybe the shark, or something changes in the balance of the system. But what it basically means is that the biodiversity of the ocean is off, and that in itself creates a problem for us. Oceans are also polluted by bad air quality, and I feel like this is something we don't talk about enough because we don't expect it to. We just don't think about. We're not connecting that. And this drawing here is my favorite from my PhD. I was working on organic pollutants, volatile organic pollutants, not the volcanic ones. And I decided to draw this. I adapted it from the US Geological Survey, but I was basically trying to explain how some of the things that we do on land end up in water resources. And so if you look at this, I basically just put up a little community that uses the compound of interest I had in mind at the time, which was BTEX, your benzene, toluene, ethyl benzene, and xylenes. Those are big compounds that we don't talk about enough in developing countries. For example, benzene causes cancer. This is something that has been proven, but it's not regulated in a lot of African countries. As a matter of fact, in a country like Nigeria that produces crude oil, we don't have any benzene regulation whatsoever. But the thing with benzene is that it just doesn't end up in your water out of the blue. It comes up from things like the refinery vapors. You know, it's carried on into precipitation, and then through that, it becomes part of your runoff or whatever it is. And basically what the point is that there's so many ways. I'm sure Amanda would share the slides at the end of the program so you can have a more detailed look. But there are so many ways in which harmful compounds that end up in the atmosphere can also end up in our oceans and be absorbed there. And we might say, well, it doesn't affect us, but it affects the life in the ocean, which will inevitably affect us as time goes on if we were to follow the principles of bioaccumulation. So what have we done so far? What has been our beautiful approach to all of these problems? You know, there's oil cleaning where there's an oil spill and everybody tries to clean that up. We've built water treatment plants in some countries. Some countries still don't know what that is. Big ups to Rwanda for doing the work and actually commissioning some of these plants recently so that people can have access to water and sanitation. And we also have this process called pyrolysis. It's something I thought of getting into after my PhD, but my interests were drawn in a different direction. And I hope Amanda hasn't had a heart attack about this, because she asked me, are you leaving science? Well, not really, not fully, but I'll share about that as I go on. But we have this thing where we can actually take waste plastics and convert them into oil, into diesel oil or gasoline. And you know, that's a beautiful process that many of my colleagues in chemical engineering are working on. But one thing I say about this, and I said this in my TED talk when I was talking about the issues women face in science, is that that's us mopping the floor with the tap open. We are not addressing the root cause of the problems. We are mopping the floor, but taps open. We need to close the tap. Okay, we need to close the tap and stop mopping, because our mopping efforts are not helping us catch up to the problem fast enough. The problem is escalating at a scale that we are not able to innovate fast enough to reach. So what do we do then? What I propose on this beautiful World Oceans Day is a three-pronged approach, SEP. That is science, education, and policy. And the thing with these is that if you look at many developing regions, which, I mean, that's what my heart beats for the most, we don't know how to innovate across these three sectors in tandem. We tend to pick one and we say, oh, look at this one. This is where we should put all of our energy. And then we pick the other one. But listen, we need to get all three working together at the same time if we're going to save our environment, because saving the ocean inevitably means saving our environment as it is. So when we talk about the science, what exactly can we do? We can clean our oceans and understand the underlying mechanisms. Poliswa did a great job of explaining the biogeochemical cycles, and I have no knowledge of that. My knowledge is more from a quality perspective in terms of water quality, because that's what I've always focused on. And when we speak of ocean pollution, obviously we know that there's issues with dredged material, especially when we have constructions. Something that still grates my corn is a certain Atlantic city that's being built in Lagos. As much as people are like, oh, so lovely, it really grates my nerves because we don't understand the impact of that on the ocean stability. We have industrial waste, like I said, where industries really feel like the pollution, the dilution effect rather, would save the ocean anyway. So they put their waste in and they hope it just gets diluted by the mixing of the water. We have runoff from agricultural land. And that in itself just contributes a high nitrate concentration into the ocean. And sometimes in some places, you just start to find that affects how life is balanced within those spaces. You have runoff from informal settlements and septic tanks. You also have badly tarred highways and the car oil spills. So you have oil contamination that comes from the land and not necessarily from the oil rigs like we usually hope that they do. And even when you talk about that, you also have issues with like your pipelines. You know, there's a leak in the pipeline, there's a burst, that itself creates a problem. Badly managed landfills and solid waste disposal sites. So we have plastic waste, medical waste, household waste, everything goes to the same place. Some of the landfills are not managed at all, which means that there's a lot of leaching and inevitably they all end up in the ocean. But how do we address that? Because I mean, that sounds all great and lovely, but oceans are vast. If we were to go in now and say, oh, we want to correct the problem, for example, of dredged material, where do you begin? This is a huge water body where you can't contain it. So what then do you do? How do we address that? It's almost impossible to address problems in the ocean without addressing problems on land, which is why I started with those interlinked sectors for us to understand that if we save the two sectors that are linked to life on the water, we inevitably fix life on the water. So we have to implement our solutions on land. My very first thing would be to start with a low waste approach, okay? So if we were to design industrial systems that use the industrial waste, so let's say, for example, I was making rubber or I was making paint, and part of my disposal would be something that contains benzene. Would it be great if as scientists, we were able to come up for another use for benzene that is fixed or retrofitted to that industrial process so that benzene just doesn't go out as benzene, it goes out as something less harmful and has absolutely no terrifying effect on the environment? How about we get industries to start to treat their waste to tertiary level? So I know in South Africa, some industries treat their wastewater to secondary level, which means that they're still allowed to pollute, okay? But it's not, there's a limitation. So they might say, for example, okay, you're allowed to put in 10 milligrams of benzene a day, okay? 10 milligrams of benzene a day is going into the water systems. We are not doing anything to clean up the water system. So what do we think is happening at the end of 120 days, for example? We've put in much more benzene than we can clean up in a good space of time. So that already is something that scientists, that I believe rather scientists should start thinking about, to say we can design industrial systems that use up the waste within the same process, so a closed industrial cycle, or one that treats the wastewater to tertiary level, such that when it is disposed into the environment, it has a zero waste contribution. Agricultural products are also big. And I feel like when we talk about plastic, about ocean pollution, we don't discuss them enough. And sometimes I feel like maybe it's because many of us live in cities and we're sort of disconnected from the agricultural aspect of things. If you live in a high-rise building in a beautiful flat, everywhere is tarred, you know, you have a garden, but it's not really a garden. It's more like fake grass. You don't really tie into the idea of what the impact of agricultural products could be in the ocean. But what if we were to make products that were free of harmful compounds? So if, for example, we were to say that the nitrates from our agriculture is polluting the environment, then can we make nitrate-free fertilizer and still have the same effect in terms of plant growth? I mean, that's something that I would like the scientists in the audience to start thinking about, because that's innovation. It's not necessarily you building a system, it's you coming to the market with a new product that saves the environment and sustains the agricultural sector. We need to use the indigenous knowledge as well to design systems through which we can use our waste. You know, people speak of composting these days like it's this new cool thing that's just arrived. Like, oh, you know, you can compost. But composting has been the way that traditional African cities, or should I say communities, used up their household waste. People kept the waste until it was what's it called, composted enough, or should I say it had fermented, because I don't know, it's an aerobic system, so we can't say fermentation. But basically, they've used it in a way that it's broken down the waste, and they use it as fertilizer to grow their food. If you've ever used black soap is made from agricultural waste. You peel plantains, right? And you put them through a process to make black soap. So indigenously, there have been systems and knowledge in place that have helped people to address waste within their communities, such that that waste never found its way into the water bodies, and they were able to preserve the life of the ocean and even the rivers around them. We can scale up production of biodegradable versions of products like plastic and plastic bags. So I hate plastic. I remember I was in class one day and I was having a bit of a fit with my cough, and my student offered me a water bottle, and it was a plastic bottle, and I'm like, no thanks, I don't drink from poison. But that's just me being dramatic. But when we speak about a low waste approach, we might need to start considering very seriously, especially in developing regions, how do we make plastic biodegradable, or how do we just remove them completely? Now, I try to visit Nigeria once a year, and I am always stunned by the amount of plastic that confronts me in my daily life. If I stop at a restaurant to get food, I'm getting it in plastic. That plastic is warmed up, so obviously there's some leaching that goes into it. So already I know that my hormones are going to be off balance. But hey, a girl has to eat. There's traffic, and it's going to take me 5 hours to get home. So I need to get the stuff that's packed in plastic. But plastic should not be our only solution. We need other things that are not plastic. And I think I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I'll share some of them. We can also use waste reduction in science, and that is to recycle things like our pollutants, like metals. We also don't talk about how metals contribute to ocean pollution. I feel like there's so many things that happen on land that we don't talk about. And even what I'm discussing is not an exhaustive list. I'm just bringing to light some of the issues that we have that we can use and how we can address them rather. So in developing regions, we can use metal waste to produce jewelry. It's okay if you don't listen, recycled waste, metal waste jewelry is lovely. You don't have to wear 10 karat gold all the time. It's okay for you to support the system that helps to clean up your environment by using them even for home furnishings, for cans, or even for drinks and stuff like that. And we can collect the dredged materials and reuse them in the construction industry. I would like to think that this beautiful Atlantic city that's being built in Lagos is doing that. I don't know if they are, but it would be great to know that they're actually collecting the dredged material and reusing them as they build up the city, because that would be amazing. My second thing is education. And you see, like I said, all the other things I just mentioned with science, like bringing up all of these systems, some of them are just treating symptoms. They're not necessarily addressing the actual disease. And education is one of the ways that we can address the root problem. Now, I currently work as an educator, even though I'm working my way into policy or trying to work my way into policy, because I feel like I would enjoy that more, but education is something that's still close to my heart. But the first thing I think of when I think of education is how terrible the science syllabus is at educating people about oceans. I mean, you've heard all the universities I went to, and I had primary and secondary education. Nobody ever spoke to me about the ocean. As a matter of fact, and I'm going to tell you, some of the things that were shared with me just told me never, ever, ever go near the ocean. So some of the fun facts, I'm just going to share these fun facts, is that oceans contribute more than 50% of the oxygen we breathe, and they take up 50 times more CO2 than the atmosphere does. So it means that they're regulating our climate at this point, regulating the availability of oxygen that we have. They regulate our climate by transporting heat from the equator to the poles. They regulate weather patterns. Ocean-dependent businesses contribute to GDP. And this is something that I feel like we're not aware of. So, I mean, Lagos is a coastal city. I grew up there. I spent about the first 16 years of my life in Lagos. And every time my mom worked on the island, and every time we just drove by, it was like, oh, there's the ocean. But there was never anything that led me to connect with the fact that this is a business venture. This is literally GDP. And that's something I feel like we need to start getting people beyond science, beyond education, even beyond policy. The business people need to get into the system of understanding how oceans contribute to GDP. They're a source of healthy seafood, which are rich in proteins and nutrients. They're a source of medicinal plants that can treat some of our chronic diseases, and we don't even know that yet. Like Koliswa said, the diversity in the ocean is so great that we don't even know what kinds of organisms are there. Right now, the diversity we see here, where you see like a 3-legged dog and you lose your mind, wait until you get into the ocean and you see a 16-winged animal. I mean, we don't know what exists in there, which means we don't know the potential that we can harness from the ocean yet. They also serve as potable water in some coastal countries. So I was in Tunisia, I think it was a couple of years ago for a conference, and the water had a weird taste. So I had to ask them, oh, where do you guys get your drinking water from? Because I'm not trying to die over here. And they're like, oh no, this is desalinated water. And that helped me realize that we look at the ocean as just this vast body that just exists. But for some people, it's a source of life. That's where they get their water from. They desalinate the water so that it can be drinkable by their residents. So how can education fix this? First things first, we need to increase awareness of the dangers of using materials like plastic. So like I said, something I've learned from being a scientist and then leaving the lab and going to work with people is that most of the time people don't care about what's happening in the ocean if they can't figure out how it affects them. So if you're going to stop people from polluting the oceans with things like plastic, you need to tell them the scary reality of plastic impact on their health. Other than that, people would just be like, well, it's plastic. It doesn't live with me. I throw it down the drain or I throw it in the bin. I don't know where it ends up. I'm not bothered. So we need to increase the awareness of understanding how plastic affects people and inevitably affects the ocean as well. We need to reinforce the understanding that there can be better packaging materials than plastic. So this is me really just focusing on plastic here. And also educate on the use of household waste for compost and for other materials as well. We can also use knowledge, our indigenous knowledge and folklore, to educate children about the importance of healthy oceans. So when I was growing up, I mean, some of the stories I used to hear on the radio, you know, there was this show called Tales by Moonlight, where someone would gather children together and tell them interesting stories, how the tortoise cracked his shell. And you'd be like, oh, wow, it teaches you not to be greedy. You know, The Boy Who Cried Wolf teaches you about false alarm and all of that. But when it comes to the ocean, what is our folklore? We hear of spirits, ghosts, things that swallow people, Jonah and the fish, that does not cultivate a healthy relationship with the ocean. So if I gather children together and I'm like, oh, in the ocean, there's this big monster that comes up like Poseidon and it swallows ships, which of those children are happily jumping on a cruise with me the next day? The answer is 0. Because they're thinking, no, I'd rather play with my friends in the sand. I don't want to go on the ocean and be swallowed by this great beast. So we need to innovate how we are teaching about the ocean. We can't wait for children to get to tertiary level and then say, oh, now we're going to tell you about the ocean. How about we have our writers that are out there, people who write children's books. Why aren't there stories about the ocean, about how empathetic the ocean is, about how lovely it is to be in the ocean, about the beauty of the ocean, things that cause children to say, I want to learn more about that. I mean, hearing that Koliswa is a Black woman in oceanography for me was like, wow. I don't know who convinced you to do that. Maybe it was the Cape Town environment, but that is amazing. And we need more people like her. We need more African children who understand the oceans around Africa. And the ways we can get them interested is by telling them lovely stories, not these scary stories. We need to encourage positive experiences with the ocean. So the Island School is a school that's connected to where I currently work. And last year, I sent 2 of my students to their summer program. It's the Island School in Bahamas. And they went there, and when they came back, it's a 6-week program. But when they came back, they were buzzing with stories of how they went diving and all the diversity they saw on the floor of the ocean. And the school doesn't just teach about the ocean, it also teaches them how to live sustainable lives that have 0 waste. So they're telling me about how they had to use their poop to generate electricity so that they don't pollute the ocean. And I'm like, yes to that. So now you know how your poop smells, but you also know that it's useful. Okay? So these are the ways that we can start to encourage. And it makes me sad when I go to coastal African countries. I mean, they're lovely. You take lovely photos. The ocean is great. I feel like we tend to relate the ocean with just relaxing, not by going into it, but by standing safely far from it. And then we're like, oh, the ocean breeze. But you see, like, we need to encourage people who go into the ocean and still find peace there. And we do that by having educational institutions like the Island School. And I'm not advertising for them, guys. They don't know me. I only sent 2 of my students there. But we need to have things like the Island School in Africa. Why can't we have that where African kids can go? My students are all from Africa, but they had to go to the Bahamas to experience the ocean. Why can't we have that in Africa where kids can go and experience what it's like to be in the ocean and understand its diversity and its power? So I really believe that these are things that we can use to encourage positive relationships with ocean bodies. My last point is policy, and this is where I'm trying to work my way into, because I've just realized that being a scientist for me means that I have developed interest in so many problems. So it's just, like I said, you already know from the beginning, I linked life on land, life in water, clean water and sanitation. Those are some of the things that haunt me. And so being in the policy space might be more helpful for me. But maybe it's time for us. I mean, I had to ask myself, do we have ocean protection policies in many of our developing countries in Africa? And I'm not sure that many would answer in the affirmative to that. I know South Africa does a great job of having policies that protect water resources. And for me, I feel like big ups to them. We actually need to look up to South Africa and then even do better in other places. So, for example, I would say that we need to draft, implement, and enforce policies that regulate industrial pollutant disposal. At the moment, we just have people who dispose pollutants indiscriminately. Over here, it's a bit well regulated. If I'm looking for a mechanic, I can go to, a well-constructed shop. Whereas in other countries, it's by the roadside. Somebody just helps you, fixes your oil, blows all the oil into the water nearby, puts it back, you're sorted. But those are things we need to fix to regulate those businesses, obviously by educating them on the impact of what they're doing, but also regulating pollutant disposal. In some developing regions, there are no disposal limits to cancer-causing compounds. There are no disposal limits to oil spills. I get a heartache every single time I see pictures from the Niger Delta region of Nigeria, and I see how much oil is in the agricultural land, in the rivers, such that people cannot even farm the land because there are no disposal limits. And obviously, if that water doesn't stay still, if it continues to flow, it ends up in an ocean somewhere. Even pesticides, those are things that we don't talk about. So when I go home and I'm like, oh, there's so many mosquitoes, my dad's like, oh, we're just gonna spray the whole house, go out for an hour and all the mosquitoes will be dead. I'm like, okay, yeah, they'll be dead, but they're gonna come back and breathe in the pesticides. So I don't know if we're killing the mosquitoes and also killing ourselves. But those are things that we don't discuss enough, and they pollute the land and end up in the ocean. We need to ban the production of single-use, non-degradable plastic. I know they solve problems. I mean, I tell my friends when I host them, I buy plastic spoons because you all are not going to clean up. But in recent years, they've all started cleaning up. So when I host, there's a time when the party ends, and then there's a time for everybody to get to the sink and start washing their dishes. So if you're planning to invite me for a party, I'll happily clean up because I make other people do it. But if I also invite you, just prepare to wash dishes and sweep floors and stuff like that. It's part of the party experience for me. But we need to ban the use of the production of single-use plastic. There are pictures that I saw on Twitter, I think it was yesterday, of how plastics have blocked drainage systems and are basically now almost as tall as people's houses, as people's cars. And these are in neighborhoods where people live. So obviously, all of that plastic leaching into the soil when there's rainfall carries all the degraded material into the oceans and creates a big problem. And I believe that by doing this, we can provide a timeline in policy for plastic-reliant businesses to innovate. I'm pretty sure I can go to a Tasty Fried Chicken or any other place in Lagos and not have to get my food in those light plastic things. No, I don't have to, but we can innovate. What are the other ways? And that enriches science research within our region. Because we know that in developed regions, these are things that are well regulated, but we don't regulate within our regions. And so we all want to run away to where there's no plastic. We want to run away to where, oh, it's so much cleaner and nicer here. But we need to own our problems and start to innovate within our institutions as well. And force organizations, obviously, to redesign their production strategies. We need to collaborate with biodiversity agencies to regulate fishing. If we don't regulate fishing, we cannot expect the fish to just reproduce. Like, this is not a kidnapped fish that you just feed with hormones and you tell it to keep popping fish out for you. We need to ensure that we are living in balance with the ocean, just as we would with the environment, so that we can sustain everything and everybody. So these are some of my suggestions, and I will conclude by saying that we have a great responsibility to preserve the oceans. Let us collaborate and do our part. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ademi. This is quite insightful. And I must say, you have tons of questions. I can already see 7 because you spoke on pollution, and most of the residents or participants with us are residing in Lagos. You know that this has been a hazard to us. So to talk about the first question, it's like this: in addressing our coastal zones and the oceanic problems, how can we control development of coastal zones against hazard exploitation of our natural resources?
That's a very interesting question. So how do we protect our coastal zones? The truth about resources is that they're there to be exploited. We need them for development, right? But what we don't have at the moment is the balance. And that is where our big problem is. We don't understand the balance of saying we're exploiting the resource, yet we're protecting the environment. It's just like if you were to go and have a hamburger at McDonald's. You're not going to eat 15 hamburgers in a sit-in. Okay, I'm not testing anyone to do that. I'm saying that's impossible. In case you want to do that, that's not okay. But you're not going to eat 15 in one sit-in and be like, yeah, this is okay. If you probably spread those 15 burgers over 15 days, right? And that's something we need to learn to do when we're talking about exploitation of resources in coastal regions. There are resources that are there that must be exploited, but we need to balance how we do so. We need to give the environment time to recover itself. Because when we don't do that, What it means is that we're degrading the environment. So the environment is not saying don't take from me. That's not what it's saying. It's saying when you take from me, give me time to heal. Give me time to recover myself, and then you can come back again. But if you keep taking and taking and taking until I burn out, if we want to link it to human terms, there's nothing left to give. The cup is empty. So I would say we need to just achieve the balance by involving multidisciplinary institutions to come together to address how we exploit resources. If we're going to exploit oil, it shouldn't just be about the oil and gas industry. It needs to be about the business industry. It needs to be about the remediation environmental industry. It needs to be about policy. All of those things need to work in tandem.
Thank you. So the second one is, what are the alternatives to plastic packaging? I'm sure this is a Lagosian.
Yes, the alternatives. So something interesting that I've seen with my cosmetics company, with my skincare company, is that they now package in bottles. I'm not saying bottles are ideal, but they package in bottles. But here's the thing. When I want to replace the product, I just get a refillable bag and then I pour it in the bottle. So the bottle never goes anywhere. So I'm constantly using the same bottle over and over again, just replacing the product. When we speak about plastic packaging, I sometimes think of ceramics. And I wonder if that would be a viable alternative to plastic packaging or even styrofoam packaging, because the styrofoam things also just, oh my God, no. I know we all want nice warm coffee when we go out, but no, those are also contributing. But I think of styrofoam packages, but I also think of paper plates a lot. And this is something that maybe we can start to design, have covered paper plates that are easily degradable or can easily be recycled. Paper is more recyclable than plastic is, if you're being honest. So how about we start to design plates around that? Or maybe even just having cans that people can actually take home and clean up and reuse, or have businesses. And I know if this is a business owner, they thinking this chick is trying to steal from us. But how about business owners have plate material, where you can just take your plate there and buy the food? I know to a Nigerian, that sounds like you're begging, but you're going to pay for the food. So you're paying for just the food. You don't have to pay for packaging. We just need to change how we relate with certain things. So those are some of the alternatives that I think of when I think of plastic packaging. I mean, I use glass for almost everything in my home. My water bottle is a glass bottle. It's a 1 liter glass bottle. It goes to work with me. I have a 500 ml glass bottle for the gym. So I try as much as possible to avoid plastic.
Okay, thank you. So to the third question is, as the challenges to the oceans continue to grow, what novel solutions can be applied, and how can young people drive them?
So I think the first thing young people need to connect with is the ocean itself. I was actually lamenting to a friend recently. I said, there's so many days for all the problems we have. There's World Water Day, World Sanitation Day, World Ocean Day. And we all come out in droves and we talk about all these things. And then afterwards, everybody forgets about it. I worked with an organization for World Water Day. After that day, nobody said anything for a year until the next Water Day. I said, you're not connected to the problem. So the first thing young people must do is connect with the ocean, okay? You live in Lagos, for example, or you live by the beach in Kenya, or you live somewhere in Morocco or Tunisia, wherever it may be, or you live in Durban or Cape Town. Have you been to the ocean? Not for a party. Just go to the ocean and see, and just have a look. Just look around and see and educate yourself on some of the things that are happening within it, right? And then afterwards, we need to identify some of the problems that I already mentioned here. Which one is region specific to you? For example, if plastic pollution is a problem where you live, I would say young people can start to form committees that actually go and pick up plastic debris by the ocean shores. It's not glamorous work, but it's meaningful work. And that's something that we need to bear in mind, that when we're addressing issues like sustainable oceans, it's not going to be glamorous. Nobody's going to come and hand you an award. Nobody's going to put your face on a poster. But that is a way of you doing your bit. And when we speak about innovation, then we now start getting into the ideas of policy, creating education NGOs, or even creating education programs. Doesn't have to be an NGO, just creating education programs. I mean, STEMI is here. STEMI Africa is here. Guys, you guys can literally design programs if you want to address sustainable oceans, connect with an existing NGO organization and run that program. You already have the resources. All you need to do is design a program. So those are some of the ways that young people can start to push innovating for sustainable oceans within their specific regions. Connecting with organizations that already exist in that region. Because I feel like we have too many of new ones just popping up. Nobody wants to contribute to something that already exists. You don't have to build something new. Just design programs and connect to other people. So yeah, those would be ways that I would suggest to address the problem.
Yeah, I really like what you said.
I'm glad.
Yeah, and because over here we had to, we didn't just want to do something like a virtual summit. We actually have like 4 projects, physical projects across West Africa. For Cameroon, for example, we are collaborating with Seed Center, where we want to do like an ocean cleanup, because in Cameroon they use plastic bottles a lot. You can literally use plastic bottles to make canoe, which that's what they do. So it's, yeah, then another for like, Gambia, we're also doing something like that. So it goes beyond just talking about it, but actually doing something, creating actions for this. So thank you so much. Yeah, so to the fourth one, as a developing country leader put it lucidly many years ago, that poverty is the greatest pollution in developing countries. So what scheme or credible policy do you think can be designed, and I know you want to go into policy, and aimed at restoring and preserving the environment in Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa as a principal target in eliminating poverty?
Oh, that's a big question. Like I said, I'm going into policy, not in policy yet, but
yes.
But I do have thoughts about that. And I agree that, poverty is a big problem. Because if, for example, I go into an informal settlement in South Africa and I say to them, you cannot put your poop in the water, people are literally just going to throw stones at me, because what are we supposed to do here? That's the question. We don't have access to the resources, so how do we address it? So something I always say when people bring the big question of poverty, because poverty is broad, okay? It's not a matter of, oh, I don't have money to eat today. That is poverty, but that's just a minuscule part of the problem. Is that you need to address the actual problems within the region, okay? By addressing the problems, you end up addressing poverty. So I usually use climate change as an example here. When we speak of climate change, it's huge. Everybody's like, oh, climate change. Today you go out in South Africa, the weather is a bit hotter than usual. Oh, climate change. Everywhere, oh, climate change, climate change. How do we address climate change? Nobody knows. But I always tell people that if we were to address, for example, treating water properly and using energy efficient processes, we end up treating climate change, because it means we have less emissions into the environment. So climate change is inevitably fixed. In the same way, if we're going to address environmental degradation that is either a result of or a contributor to poverty, what we need to first of all address is the living situations of people. So I brought up the issue of clean water and sanitation, for example. Do we have sanitation policies that protect the poor and the vulnerable? I tell people when I'm in Lagos, I tell people I don't have access to sanitation, even though I live in a 4-bedroom house with 5 toilets. I don't have access to sanitation. Do you know why? The moment I leave that house, I don't have a place to pee. I can't just stop randomly and go pee anywhere. So do I have access to sanitation? The answer is no. So we first of all need to address. So imagine it's not me. I mean, I say that I live in a place where there are toilets, but imagine those who live in places where there are no toilets. Then what happens to them? So we first of all, let's fix the issue of sanitation, because when we fix the issue of sanitation, we fix the degradation that results from sanitation problems. Because then people don't poop in plastic bags. And if you go into boarding school in Nigeria, I'm sure this was a normal thing for you. Don't be ashamed, it's okay. Poop in plastic bags and then fling them into the bush. Nobody would have to do that because they are functional toilets. So already we are addressing the poverty issue of not having access to sanitation, but at the same time preserving the environment. So if we're going to address poverty problems that relate to environmental degradation, what we should fix are the root causes of environmental degradation. We need to dignify people. It's not okay for people to live in a region where there are no landfills for waste disposal. So I live in a region, and down my street is where everybody from the street piles their waste. All the household waste, the paper, that doesn't dignify me as a resident of that region. So if we were to have policies in place in terms of sanitation cleanups in different regions, we dignify the people, we save the environment, we reduce the poverty level. Because reducing the poverty level in that instance basically means that we're improving the standard of living. It doesn't mean you put money in people's pockets. Putting money in their pockets doesn't save them from poverty. I could have a ton of money, but down my street, the sewer is broken. So all the poop is flowing past my front gate. I mean, so what's my money for? I'm not going to take my $100 bills and scoop out the poop. So that doesn't help anybody. What you need is to improve the living situations of people, improve the standard of living. That is what would address poverty and addresses environmental degradation all in one swoop. So that would be my suggestion to the Oscar. I'm not in policy yet. I apologize if my answer is not, holistic enough. But I do hope that as I get better and I get into the policy space, that I'm able to do this much better. I hope that's not the one.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. So I will take 2 questions because I think we're running out of time. The second to last question is, what policy regulations would you advise to help curb over-consumerism and a threat to biodiversity in Nigerian marine life?
So something interesting that I always heard as a child, I don't know if it's true, is that my mom always said beef is expensive. Okay, beef is expensive, so we're gonna eat fish because fish is cheaper. And so everybody followed suit. We all ate fish. Till today, I don't know if beef is expensive. I'm not a big beef eater because I just didn't grow up on it. But when we speak about consumerism, that obviously now brings us to the issue of regulating our markets, okay? And what's it called? And the people at the forefront of those markets. So we have fishermen in Nigeria that go out, they catch the fish, they sell the fish, we buy the fish, we eat the fish. But I don't think those people are under a specific body that is connected to the government, to the state governments where this oceans exist, right? And something that we might need to start doing is to start getting all of those people together into communities and helping them understand why it is important for them to diversify their seafood catches, how to regulate seasons. So there's sometimes I go out in South Africa, I want to buy a particular fish. It's just not there because, that's the time for the fish to rest and to reproduce. Okay. So I'm going there and I'm like, oh, today I want to get some sardines. I get there and they're like, oh, there are no sardines this time around because, the new catch for the season is this. Do we have seasonal catches in Nigeria? No, if I want croaker fish, I always get croaker fish. It doesn't matter, right? Because there is no regulation and there's no understanding of the seasons in which those fishes reproduce. So I would first of all say, before policy, there needs to be a scientific investigation of the particular species that are consumed to understand their reproductive cycles, how long it takes for them to spawn, when they are most active in reproduction, and leave the reproductive seasons out of our fishing agenda and look for other fish that can fill up that gap. Because if we do that, then we're able to reduce effectively how much of each species we consume, and we give the ocean time to just